sudden, destructive, devastating. In today's video, we'll be looking at 12 of the most incredible disasters ever caught on high-quality footage. 2022, southeastern Moscow. A Russian air defense system malfunctioned during operations. The automated missile fired at a Ukrainian drone flying nearby, but somewhere in its flight, the missile malfunctioned. Instead of destroying the drone, the missile veered off course and flew directly towards a much more explosive target. The missile struck the tank directly, causing a catastrophic explosion. The oil tank erupted in a massive fireball, sending flames and thick black smoke rising thousands of feet into the air. The oil tank's lid flew off like a toy, landing hundreds of feet from where it had once covered the valuable crude oil. The explosion damaged other infrastructure nearby and contaminated the surrounding area. Investigation revealed a critical failure in the targeting system's algorithms, a costly mistake in military operations. July 12, 2012, Kootenay Lake, British Columbia. Morning. A small community nestled on the shores of Kootenay Lake was devastated when 320,000 cubic meters of soil, rock, and trees came roaring down the mountainside. Record rainfall and an unusually late spring snowmelt had saturated the glacial deposits on the slope above the town. Suddenly, without warning, the mountain failed. The debris avalanche traveled down Gar Creek at speeds of 150 kilometers per hour, nearly a mile down the slope in seconds. The torrent destroyed 3 homes instantly. 4 people were killed, buried alive in their own homes. A man and his 2 daughters perished in one house. A woman died in another. The secondary debris flow continued another kilometer before dumping into the lake. It was the largest landslide to strike the region in at least 12,000 years. May 11th, 1994, Sunray, Texas. A massive grain elevator, a towering structure used to store and process grain, was the heart of the agricultural community. On this afternoon, an explosion erupted inside the facility. Tons of grain dust, a highly flammable substance when suspended in air, ignited in a massive blast. The explosion was so powerful it destroyed the entire structure in seconds. The shock wave was felt for miles. A massive fireball rose into the sky. Debris scattered across the surrounding area. Nearby buildings were damaged from the force. Investigators later determined that a spark or electrical malfunction had ignited the dust cloud, a common but catastrophic hazard in grain facilities. Multiple people were injured. The facility was a complete loss. October 17, 2014, Chevron Refinery, Richmond, California. An oil tanker loaded with flammable product was offloading at the facility when disaster struck. A massive amount of hot oil spilled onto the ground, creating a spreading pool of fuel as the hot liquid hit cooler air. Rapid expansion occurred, causing the liquid to superheat and violently boil. An enormous fireball erupted across the facility, shooting flames hundreds of feet into the air. The boilover effect created an explosion far more violent than a normal fire, the superheated oil turning to steam instantaneously. The fire consumed the area, burning everything in its path. If you are enjoying this video, please give us a like and subscribe for more twice-weekly disaster content. June 24th, 2021, Surfside, Miami, Florida. 1:23 a.m. The Champlain Towers South, a 12-story residential building, catastrophically collapsed without warning. At 1:23 a.m., as most residents slept, the structure suddenly gave way. Tons of concrete, steel, and debris cascaded down, crushing everything beneath it. The entire eastern side of the building pancaked onto the ground floor. Residents were jolted awake by the violent collapse. Some were trapped in the rubble. Others managed to escape into the darkness. The collapse was so sudden and complete that investigators later determined the failure originated in the basement structure. Corroded support columns combined with poor maintenance had weakened the foundation beyond its load-bearing capacity. Rescue workers dug through the rubble for weeks, searching for survivors and recovering victims. 98 people were killed. It became the deadliest building collapse in United States history. October 2023, Rockland Harbor, Maine. A large cruise ship was docked at the harbor for routine operations when severe weather approached. Strong winds and rough seas began testing the ship's moorings, the heavy cables anchoring it to the dock. The moorings couldn't withstand the forces. One by one, the cables snapped. The massive cruise ship, weighing thousands of tons, began drifting into the harbor and toward the dock infrastructure. The ship smashed into the dock, damaging the structure and threatening other vessels nearby. Tugs rushed to the scene to regain control of the drifting vessel. After hours of careful maneuvering, the ship was brought back under control and secured with additional lines. Minor damage was sustained by the dock and infrastructure.
Yeah, Rockland Coast Guard, this is a Pelican. Pelican, this is Rockland Coast Guard, go ahead, over. Yeah, Rockland Coast Guard, that's not on the pier of
July 24th, 2013, Santiago de Compostela, Spain. 8:41 p.m. An Alvia train was approaching the city on curved tracks when the driver lost control. The train was traveling far too fast for the sharp curve, approximately 190 kilometers per hour, in a 80 kilometers per hour zone. As the train entered the curve, it began to derail. The locomotive and cars twisted violently as they left the rails, tumbling across the ground in a chaotic tangle of metal. Passengers were thrown about inside the cars as the train disintegrated around them. 79 people were killed during the disaster. June 27, 2022, Port of Aqaba, Jordan. 4:15 p.m. A massive crane was loading pressurized chemical containers onto a cargo ship when disaster struck. One of the containers held 25 tons of deadly chlorine gas for export. The lifting sling snapped. The container was rated for 8.5 tons, but weighed 28.9 tons. The tank plummeted onto the ship's deck and ruptured on impact. A massive cloud of bright yellow chlorine gas erupted from the container, spreading rapidly across the entire port. Chlorine gas is lethal. When inhaled, it dissolves lung tissue within minutes. Dock workers ran for their lives. Some collapsed within seconds from exposure. 13 people were killed. Over 265 were injured. Hospital emergency rooms filled to capacity. Nearby beaches were evacuated. August 28, 2015, Port of Jacksonville, Florida. A massive gantry crane was lifting shipping containers when catastrophic failure occurred. The crane drifted from its track and collided directly into an adjacent crane parked nearby. The impact was catastrophic. The collision triggered a domino effect. The struck crane toppled sideways and crashed into a third crane. One by one, multiple cranes began to fail and collapse across the dock. Debris rained down across the port. The cascading collapse destroyed equipment and cargo worth millions of dollars. A dock worker was struck by falling debris and killed instantly. Several others were injured in the chaos. The incident closed the port for weeks while investigators examined the wreckage and determined how multiple cranes could collapse from a single collision. December 2017. Alta, northern Norway. Heavy rainfall on weak permafrost soil triggered a catastrophic landslide. The land was built on quick clay, unstable glacial sediment that had formed when the area was beneath sea level during the early Holocene epoch. A local resident named Jan Egil Bakkadal was preparing a sandwich in his cabin when he heard a loud crack and saw his power cord smoking. He ran for his life up the mountainside. From higher ground, he filmed the nightmare unfolding below. An enormous chunk of land, 650 to 800 meters wide and 40 meters high, broke clean away from the coast and slid directly into the sea. The 8 houses and all their contents vanished beneath the churning waters in seconds. One dog, an elk hound named Raya, was swept into the sea but miraculously managed to swim back to shore and was rescued. No people were killed. All residents had been evacuated. Smaller landslides followed for days afterward, keeping the area unstable and terrifying. It was the largest landslide to ever strike the Alta region. February 2022. Buffalo, New York. A massive ice jam formed in the Niagara River when warming temperatures began melting winter ice. The accumulated ice, hundreds of tons of frozen water, became unstable and began moving downstream with enormous force. The ice flow rushed toward a bridge crossing the river. The impact was catastrophic. The massive ice flows slammed into the bridge's support structure with tremendous force. The bridge swayed under the pressure. Sections of the structure were damaged. The impact closed the bridge indefinitely while engineers assessed the damage. The ice jam demonstrated the raw power of nature, ice flows capable of destroying engineered structures. November 20th, 2017, Atlanta, Georgia, 7:30 a.m. The Georgia Dome, home to the Atlanta Falcons for 25 years, was scheduled for controlled implosion after decades of service. The Weather Channel had positioned a camera crew at the perfect vantage point for a live stream. Everything was set. The countdown began. Explosives were detonated. But at the exact moment the stadium began to collapse, a MARTA City bus drove into frame, coming to a complete stop directly in front of the camera. For 15 seconds, the entire duration of the implosion, the bus blocked the entire view. All that could be seen was the rear bumper of the bus as the stadium crumbled behind it. As the bus pulled away, only smoke and debris were visible. The footage became instantly infamous, a perfect example of Murphy's Law catching national television live on air.
Get out!